talk about some numbers here. So we're going to talk
And on the
about,
voices?
yeah,
Shit.
actually, Sony and Microsoft released their financials, right, Chris? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, so I've only had time to look at Sony's financials because I'll give it up. Like Nintendo only does one thing, right? They make games, so their financials are straightforward. It's just gaming. Sony's are clean. They break down by segment, and it's very clear what you're looking at. Yo, Microsoft, it's like looking for the fucking Ark of the Covenant when trying to find Xbox in there, man. So if anybody wants to ask a question for Sunday, I will have time to look for it, but I didn't have time today to check that out.
Yeah.
So
So
I
for
will.
tonight, just Sony and Nintendo, then, right? Is that what we're doing?
I'm doing Sony. I
So
didn't.
okay, Sony's fine. They're the easiest one. Hey, you got the charts? Let's go. All right.
Yeah. So I was
Whoa.
looking at. Can you see this? Is it
Yes, yes, we can.
okay? So let me hit. Let me
Good.
go back up to the segment.
Those Discord sounds, bro. We'll close off those
Yeah.
porn tabs.
Yeah. I just.
All right, for you guys listening, just give us a sec while Chris gets a little bit organized here. So yeah, it was this expected, Chris? I wasn't expecting the numbers to drop. I think you were expecting them though, right?
I did. Just didn't know when. Maybe I should buy some stock so I could be. Hey, Chris, you want to be on
Stonks.
the phone call? Or sit there like I just want to download this shit
Yeah.
early.
Hey, just buy one action, man.
Yeah. So So Sony had not only a very good quarter, they had a very good fiscal year. And by Sony, I mean PlayStation. So I'm going to make that.
Yes.
I'm going to just say they call it games and network services. That's PlayStation when I say that. But Sony overall, corporate wise, the company overall had a good fiscal year. I think the only segment that lost money was two segments of Sony Pictures and their imaging section, so their camera stuff.
The camera
But
stuff, yeah.
but
So the usual suspects.
everything else was positive, especially PlayStation, and then their services they offer in Japan, which are just local, like life insurance and financial services. So Sony has their own accounting and stuff they do that did well, but we're here to talk about PlayStation. So PlayStation did phenomenally well. Um, it was up for the quarter, 34% over last year, and overall, I think the when I calculated the overall fiscal, it was up 34%. So let me didn't have this. I thought I had it selected. I'm only seeing the quarter now. Okay, here's the. Oh no, that's their projection. So their projection for next year is modest actually,
Really?
and I'm only thinking it's yeah they're only predicting a 9% increase in profit for PlayStation, and I can only assume that's because of the freaking shortages in chip supply. Like I don't think this whole thing with you not being able to find a PlayStation, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. I don't. I think they know that too, and they're
What
just
the chip
Because of the
shortages and
chip
all that,
shortage,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They can't manufacture enough systems, and they also said that there was an impact in their operating income for PlayStation, and they said specifically in the detailed report. I'm just looking at the presentation for the summary. The detailed report they said that their strategic pricing, that's how they refer to it, basically how they price the digital and this version of PlayStation, could not cover their manufacturing cost.
Oh, wow.
So they are
Mm.
losing money on each system. So that's why there's a negative operating income. But overall the sales were positive, and most of that was due to, they said, an increase in PlayStation Plus subscriptions, an increase in digital sales. Of course, as we pointed out in previous throwdowns too, the Rona had a lot to do with it. People were spending more on games,
Yeah.
being locked down and stuff, looking for entertainment. So game sales overall, and you can look, we talked about this with Activision too, game sales soared last year. So that too helped them. So in the software segment, a lot of this profit was due to um, software sales. But they did say they made about, I think, 7.8 billion US in hardware sales, and that's even with limited stock. I can't find a PlayStation. If it wasn't for Carlos, I wouldn't have one. If it wasn't for Fergus Mills, he wouldn't have one. It was ridiculous, and I don't think that's changed. Huh?
Shout out to everyone, man.
Yeah. Shout out to everyone. So that hasn't changed. The same thing with Xbox. Now you notice too, like, so if I mean I know we don't care about Apple, but when they do their reveals, their hardware reveals, they usually update their SKUs across the board. You know, it's like the new iMac, a new iPad Pro. Blah, blah. This time around, they've had 2 different presentations where they've segmented what they're updating, and even all their SKUs don't get updates. And why is that? Because they can't manufacture enough chips and fab enough updates to update the SKUs at one time. They used to have one big presentation, and then the Worldwide Developer Conference. So they had 2 big shows. This time they've had like 3 hardware shows, and they even haven't updated their whole hardware. And like that's not anything about them. It's just that overall, this whole thing with the Rona and manufacturing slowdowns and chip shortages affects everyone. I mean, go try to buy a 3000 series Nvidia card. Go even try to buy an Xbox. Go try to find some new phones. You can't find them. It affects everything. So overall, Sony had a very good year. Like I said, their only losses was Sony Pictures. I think Sony Pictures lost something like $6 billion. You can see the quarterly, they lost, I think, roughly 1.5 billion for the quarter, which is huge, right? That's not chump change. But for the year, they lost a lot more. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then I'm seeing here that they sold. Let me look at it. 7.8 million PlayStation 5s, and it's actually sold more than PlayStation 4 did at the same time, in the same time frame.
Which is, I think it's well, that's wild, but that's not unexpected because remember, a lot of those sales were from scalpers.
Yes,
so
right.
Their money.
Or the scalpers right now sitting.
Yeah. So scalpers were buying up all the stock. So in terms of initial hardware sales, yes, they made a huge profit and they sold faster. It's just because scalpers were buying a majority of those systems and sitting on them, and people don't want to deal with that. People just want to buy the system, and there's a shortage now. So you have scalpers sitting on thousands of systems. So they're losing residual income on software. Even though their software did well, it could do better because those systems are not in people's hands. They're sitting somewhere in somebody's garage.
Let me ask you something. Do you believe some of the reports that say that scalpers only account for 10% of those sales?
I don't know. I don't know. Let's see.
And if they are, let's just say for the sake of argument, those 10% of those sales are from scalpers. How many systems would they have actually sold if you take that 10% away?
Well, if you're saying 10% of 7.6, so 760,000.
7.8.
So 7.8. Okay, so you're 780,000. So they would have only sold around roughly 7 million.
Okay, 7 million.
If you only take the 10%,
yeah,
I'd say it's more like double that.
Really? 20%?
It's not just scalpers in one region. It's scalpers in most regions. Besides, I don't think that was happening in Japan. And in Europe and here, for sure it was happening.
Yeah.
And it's still happening. So I think it's way more than that.
I feel like 10% is low. I mean, if you even think about it, for every 10 PlayStations on the shelf, only one of them is bought by a scalper.
That's a good point.
Right?
But wouldn't those systems have sold out regardless? That's what we're here. I'm seeing in the chat right now.
I really do think they low-key would have sold out regardless.
No, well, that's not my argument.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't have sold out. My argument is that you would have had an even bigger profit margin on software if those systems.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you said yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if you said they had record 7.8 million, right. But those 7.8 million people, not roughly 6 million people, and then over a million, I guarantee, are sitting somewhere waiting to be scalped. And that's what's hurting them.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about this before, how they talked about how the attach rate isn't as high as they expected. Of course not, because these guys are just sitting on these consoles, you know?
Yo, man, they're only playing Astro's Playroom.
No, they're not playing shit. It's just sitting these assholes.
No,
just-
you see what I'm saying though. There's all these PlayStations that are out there, and they're only playing Astro's Playroom. You know, kind of like Wii bowling.
No, but the point is those.
I'm the joke, dude. The joke. That's the joke.
All right, it went over my head. Anyway, Chris, go on.
Yeah. So, I mean, for what it is, for even those conditions, you got the Rona, you got scalpers, you got chip shortages. They made out pretty well, and overall, the company saw huge profits. Like, so if you look at this, like, I mean, the consolidated results, they had an 8% increase in overall sales for the entire company, like Sony total, like everything, over the year before, and that's with taking big losses in imaging and Sony Pictures, which, like I said, were the only two segments I think that lost a major amount of money. But overall, I think PlayStation made up for Sony Pictures losses, and imaging losses weren't too bad. So overall, they made out rather well.
Except for Sony Pictures, you know.
Yeah, even the music segment was profitable, but only because they sold off a label. I'm not familiar with Sony's sub labels, so I won't get into that. We only care about PlayStation, so. But they sold a label. I saw it in the main financial report.
All right, so
They still own Columbia, right?
Yeah,
They still own Columbia and Epic.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think that's all integrated.
Because that was that. I remember when I did my internship, it was at that Sony building that they sold a few years back, and I'm assuming they just sold the building. They didn't sell everything in it. It's like, yeah, the one with we used to say the one with the half pipe up top.
Yeah, on the roof.
That's what it looked like, a half pipe on the top of the building.
Well, they also sold their Japanese headquarters too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they're
The one they
running
had
out
for
of
years, the one
somebody's
from
basement.
I don't know where they are. I know Sony Interactive, which is PlayStation now, is in San Francisco. I don't know where a lot of their other stuff is. Maybe they have smaller headquarters around Japan, but not that big old building that you used to see from the 80s films talking about Sony Electronics. They don't have that building anymore.
Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah. So, what are the big takeaways that we could glean from this thing?
The big takeaways is that they have had a phenomenal uptick in software sales and subscriptions signups for PlayStation Network, and the for what it is, the sales of PS5 were rather good. Like I said, and I agree with people, like those systems would have sold either way, but the software sales, remember, software is hurt with the hardware that's not in real people's hands.
Yeah.
Like scalpers buying systems is one thing, them sitting on it is quite another thing. But even with that, with the conditions, with things the way they are with Rona and stuff, there was a huge uptick in software sales, especially first party titles, and there was an increase in first time owners and PlayStation Network subscriptions for first timers. So that was also huge. So that was the main impacts of this last fiscal year for PlayStation.
Yeah, I like what Two Meka just said. He goes, "Sony overcame the Rona and Jim Ryan."
But like I said, their predictions for next fiscal year are way more conservative. Like that 29% increase year over year I talked about now.
Yeah.
Their projection is only 9%.
Interesting.
For next fiscal year. That's very conservative for a time period when we're going to actually get next gen games.
Yeah.
We're starting to, and you're going to get those titles. So what would impact those sales? And the only thing
chip shortage.
Is a chip shortage, right? Yeah. So people still not being able to get systems. So the sales may actually slow, even though they were big out the gate, they may slow down. And remember, everybody's competing for the same resources. Everybody. I'm not just talking. It's not just Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. It's Apple, Samsung, IBM. Everybody. Everybody makes chips. Everybody.
The car
needs those
companies too.
resources.
Oh, yeah,
NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, everybody uses the same resource. Everybody goes to China for their rare earths. They go there for their lithium. They go there for the silicon. They go there for the copper. And so they choke out the market. If they don't supply it, nobody has it.
Man, we gotta start mining asteroids for this shit, man.
Yeah.
See, I seen Armageddon. I know how it
Yeah,
works.
get
You know, we
Bruce
just gotta
Willis up
get
there, man.
We get
You
Bruce
know?
Willis and friends. And,
That's it. Ben
Bruce
Affleck,
Let's do it.
Friends.
Let's
you
do
know,
it.
Ving Rhames, you know.
Exactly. Bring back Aerosmith. Come on. Let's do this. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. I guess, does anybody have any questions about these financials?
Yeah.
Predictable. I mean, Sony's big money maker is always PlayStation, and it's like Chris. Every time Chris goes through the numbers, like, yeah, Image and Sony Pictures have been at a loss and stuff, and I'm like, yeah.
I think this may be the third year in a row on Throwdown. I'm like, what are they doing with Sony Pictures? And the only reason I can think of that they don't try to sell off like a piece of it, like TriStar or whatever, is they'd have to sell off the IP with it. They'd have to lose something. And they're banking on Spider-Man constantly.
Yeah.
That's why they're
They also own Ghostbusters, right?
Yes,
It's the
they own
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, through Columbia, they own some IP, so they own Ghostbusters now, right? When they absorbed TriStar, they got some stuff. You know, they've
got
absorbed
Beverly
all
Hills
these
Cop.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got all these things now. They won't sell it off. They'll just eat those losses. But imagine if PlayStation wasn't doing well. How do you eat those losses?
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
PlayStation, we've said this a million times, PlayStation is what's keeping Sony afloat.
Yeah.
You know?
it really is.
Nobody buys their Walkmans anymore.
Yeah, nobody, I was about to say that. Nobody's
They
walking
did
that
not
shit.
sell it.
You
I'm
know?
sure everybody had a Sony Walkman at some point.
Back in the day, of course.
That
you
was
know?
it. That was a must-have.
Had to have it.